Good afternoon. This is John McAllister with Upper Sandusky, my hometown. I'm excited. I get to talk with former very tremendous athlete from Upper Sandusky, graduated in 2005, and his name is Greg Micheli. Greg Micheli went on to Mount Union, and now he has a business up in the the Avon area, Brunswick area, and it's really exciting to talk to him. He's going to share some thoughts on small town. He's got his back in the days he remembers, and his job, and things like that. And you'll find he is a true character guy, a good character guy, class act, and I'm so excited to do him today and learn a lot. And we talked a lot often on the air and off the air, and he's just a great individual. Greg Micheli. So sit back and enjoy my video podcast, Upper Sandusky, my hometown. Greg Micheli, Upper Sandusky graduate in 2005. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on, John.
Well, it's fun. I'm sure people will be interested in your story. You know, obviously, you have a legend here in athletics and academics, but we'll get to that later. What are you doing now, Greg? What's your job now or your position?
Yeah, so I'm in Cleveland now. I've been in Cleveland since college. My first job brought me here, and so far, at least, I've stayed. I currently oversee operations for a small medical device manufacturer. We manufacture spine implants, specifically titanium bone plates, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years or so. So we're very small. We like it that way, and it's kept me busy.
Well, you told me earlier before the show that you're almost a one-man show, aren't you, as far as the major part of it?
Yeah, I mean, my part of it, it's kind of a one-man show, 1.5. We've got some part-time help in a couple of areas. The founders are involved. So, my piece of it, I get to have my hand in just about everything, which I like. But we've managed to stay small this entire time. One of these days we may be forced to grow or may want to grow, but for the time being, this suits us well.
So do you live in Elyria or Avon? Is this business in Avon now?
No, the business is in Brunswick, Ohio. Maybe 15, 20 minutes southwest of downtown Cleveland off Route 71. I live in Rocky River, about 15 minutes west of downtown. So it's I like being close enough to the city that I can be in the action if I want, but I also like kind of being out of it when I want as well. So it works out well.
We'll go right into that then. What you like a little bit of the same different environment, small and big. Tell me, what did you learn from being from a small town of Upper Sandusky? What did you learn from that? And you can go positive or negative. I'm more positive, but what did you learn from that?
Yeah. Well, at least the perception of small towns is that everybody knows everybody, and it's true to some extent, but particularly when you play athletics, if you have a little bit of success, people know your name, they end up learning your family's name. So I think to start, I was raised right, but you learn that you maybe have a microscope on you a little bit. And I think that's great in terms of learning how to carry yourself with, strangers or when you think nobody's looking. And I think that's probably was the biggest benefit to being in a small town is, you're kind of trying to be on your best behavior at all times. And some people may think that sounds unappealing in your youth, but I think it served me well, maybe professionally. And when I got to college, just because I went to a small college, Mount Union, where same deal. The football program is so high profile. If you're on the field and you have a little bit of success, people learn your name, professors and other students. And so you end up with, I think, probably under the microscope a little bit more than the average person.
I agree totally, and I think that your choice of Mount Union was a pretty good choice. Okay, tell me about Mount Union a little bit. I will tell you a war story on Karras, Coach
Oh,
Karras.
okay. I want to hear that, but
Well, no, it's
um,
not. It's a funny
okay,
story. He
yeah,
was telling me, he said, yeah, he said, Upper Sandusky, he said, they were crazy. He said, I went to watch Micheli play basketball, I think at Willard.
yep,
Got to Willard, and he said, I got there about 7:15. He said, sold out. He
yep,
said, sold out. And he said, I didn't want to use my name. I didn't think it'd do any good. And he said, it didn't for a while. And this is who I am. He goes, sorry, we're sold out. He said he ended up, his wife, they finally got in, and he was in the top row of the bleachers. He said, I couldn't believe that place.
yep,
That's a
yep,
positive thing. Pretty
yep.
good
Yeah.
football program at
What's
Mount
that?
Union.
I'm sorry.
Pretty
You
good
cut out.
football program.
Yeah, yeah, great football program, and I don't know how much you know about my recruiting story, but I never ended up with a Division I offer. I did have kind of late some Division II offers. I didn't have any interest at all from any Division III schools. And at some point, I'm trying to think, we played Huron in the playoffs my senior year. So Jason Candle, the head coach at Toledo now,
Right.
he came to recruit a couple players from that Huron team and ended up giving me a phone call afterwards. So I ended up taking a visit to Mount Union and loved it. And he was one of the few coaches that had said, you're not going to play anything but quarterback here. So most places that I went had said, oh, we may have you play safety. You're probably not going to play quarterback. And I kind of had my mindset on playing quarterback. So one thing led to another, and I eventually decided to go to Mount Union. And at that point, I started getting all sorts of calls from other schools saying, we thought you were going to get a scholarship. We didn't think you'd end up playing Division III. And, I was
they're blowing smoke up your nose a little bit, but go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I was fortunate to end up with an academic scholarship at Mount Union. So I didn't have to, the dollars didn't weigh on my decision like it might for other kids. So I was fortunate in that regard. But that's kind of how I ended up at Mount Union. And yeah, they have an incredible program. At that time, I don't remember how many championships I had, maybe 6 or 7. And the expectation at that point is that you make it to the championship game and you win the championship game every year. So completely different mentality and environment than I had been used to, obviously at Upper Sandusky.
Right.
And, my mindset there is I didn't have a good perspective on if I could play at the next level or not. I didn't have anybody, a peer or somebody that I played against I saw have success at the next level, really. So my mindset was kind of if I end up being able to play here, I get to play for a winner, But
Right.
if I go there and I don't end up playing, then so be it.
They have coaches all over the country. I mean, Matt Campbell's a really good friend of mine. He's got a staff, like about half of them are Mount Union guys. Toledo, Jason, and then Coach Karras' son just went there. I mean, they're all over the place. And I'm not so sure. I've had guys tell me all kind of people, not just football coaches, but all kind of Mount Union grads are all over the place.
I don't know much outside of the football, but that football coaching tree is
crazy.
Vast. It's all the way from high school up to the pros and head coaches to assistants. I'm sure there's some front office guys in there, but they've had tremendous success and it all originated with Larry Karras.
Your skills could have been better, actual quarterback skills. And I think, did you go to many camps?
I started going to a few, but mostly we did those passing camps. In terms of individual camps, I did a little bit of that stuff, but not a lot.
It's pretty huge now. The quarterbacks, they have to see you throw, college coaches, but obviously that's all water. But I think, and then everybody told me, well, could he be free safety? I said, I don't know. I don't think people here in small towns and people here locally understand just how hard it is to do that, to go to Mount Union. Johnny did it obviously at Ohio State, big change for him. And then Kurt McMillan did it at Miami. And, I don't think people understand how hard it is. But
yeah, I agree with you. And people didn't see my struggles there. I mean, I think people said that, my struggles were on the practice field and with the JV squad. So, people didn't see that. But when I was a freshman, I split time with another player on the JV squad. He'd go a series, I'd go a series, or we'd do a quarter and a quarter. And early in my freshman year, I threw, I think, 3 interceptions playing half of the game. And I should have thrown a fourth, but the defender caught the ball and came down with a toe out of bounds. And, I think maybe if I'd gone to a bigger program, I probably would have, gotten washed out or then overlooked or, hey, this guy's not going to cut it. We got to go somewhere else. But that very next practice that we had after that, Coach Karras assigned a coach to me, and he said, I'm going to stand behind you. And every single play, you're going to turn around and you're going to tell me what you saw pre-snap. You're going to tell me what you saw post-snap, and you're going to tell me why you made the decision that you made. And that was huge for my mental development.
Right.
Physically, I didn't have the arm strength even to play at Mount Union. I was having all sorts of, sore elbow, a sore shoulder, and I didn't do anything about it. I just tried to keep practicing, and to the point of I couldn't complete, a shorter throw. And I think Coach Karras actually tossed me out of a drill because of it and encouraged me to get some help and admit that, this is an issue. But I had to get stronger. I had to get mentally more intelligent. And I think if I'd gone to a big program, they wouldn't have given me the amount of time that I needed to develop. So I benefited from having guys ahead of me and then being on a squad where, they don't cut anybody. We start camp with over 200 guys.
Yeah.
And, Coach Karras made a point that we're going to mentor this kid. We're going to develop this kid. And without that, my time there probably ends up drastically different.
Gives the athletes some advice, and you've done that. Okay. Because that's what all you're saying is true. And it's changed. And I want to go on to something else, but what was there ever a time, Greg, and this is a question I ask high school seniors, but was there ever a time when the light came on for you when you said, let's go in your life or in business or any time where you said, I've really got to step it up and I've got to drive myself? Was there ever a time like that?
Well, I think if you have that just from within, that's exceptionally unique. The area that I saw that, and it made a huge difference for me, is probably when the Dieblers moved into town. It's one thing to have a coach you up about your attitude and your effort and how to get the most out of a workout, how to get the most out of a practice. But I've never seen individuals work as hard, other players work as hard as Jake and John Diebler worked. And it was eye-opening, but unless you see it, I think it's difficult to just do it. And some people I'm sure have it. They may not have just had it. They may have seen it from their older brother or somebody else. I suspect that those guys have a certain amount of that already programmed into them, but that was an eye-opening experience for me to see somebody practice as hard as they practiced, prepare as hard as they prepared, and to play as hard as they played.
Yeah, and then you fed off of that, and then you became that way.
Yeah, I think to some extent, and that carried over into Mount Union because that was a culture of a bunch of guys with a similar attitude, a similar drive, and you get on board or you get left behind. And there's a saying out there that you're basically the average of, I think, the 5 closest people in your life that you spend your time with. I think you can expand that with a team that you're going to be an average of the people that you work out with, that you do film study with, that you play alongside. So if you can surround yourself with like-minded people or people that are, maybe more driven, more talented than you, that's only going to elevate yourself physically and mentally.
Yeah. Just so you know, just so you know, I saw you in the 8th grade. Okay.
You did. Okay.
John Siebenauer here, a friend of mine here in Upper Sandusky, he said, I don't know how good this kid can be. How about you? He said, I've watched him. And he said, man, he's got a lot of talent. So we go there. I was just thinking he put me on to you. But what you said, and I have to be so careful, is so true, especially in small towns. Kids sometimes don't realize just how hard they work, Greg. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they think they're working hard, but they're really not. And
you're exactly right.
I call it the inconvenience level. And I've been fortunate to be around a lot of great athletes, but whenever it becomes an inconvenience, it shuts down. And you got to go beyond that. And even in your job, when it becomes an inconvenience, can't go home. You gotta step it up. And I think it's huge. And I ask you that, what drives you, and you've kind of said that. What was the big adjustment moving into the city area? I'm very familiar with Rocky River and North Ridgeview and all those schools and those places. What's the biggest adjustment to that?
Well, I think the biggest adjustment is coming from a small town. I guess even if you weren't in a position where you were a familiar face or familiar name to other people, it feels familiar. You feel part of the community. The moment you go to a big city for the first time, that sense of community, in my mind, kind of disappears. If you're there long enough, you get that back. But as big as it is, your world, at least my world, almost got smaller. And it's kind of stayed that way. I don't know if that's a product of getting older or what it is, but to me, that was a big adjustment. Going from feeling like I was part of a community in Upper Sandusky, feeling like I was part of a community on the football team and at Mount Union, and then all of a sudden, that community is gone, or it's 2 hours away.
Right. Okay. Here's a silly question for you. Okay. Scrapbook time. Well, as you look back in your life, what would be 4 things that you would put in your scrapbook? I do that with high school kids. I mean, what would be 4 things that you remember coming through? Let's just do Upper Sandusky, because I think people can relate to that. What would be 3 or 4 things that you could put?
3 or 4 things. Okay. Maybe we'll work backwards. We'll start with the state championship basketball team my senior year. So that was surreal for us in that as kids, we used to knock off school for a couple days, and we would go to the state tournament every year. And we'd go and watch all the games, and we'd sit up in the nosebleed and talk about how neat it would be to play on the court, and without ever the thought that we'd have any shot of actually playing there. So fast forward to our senior year, and similar to Mount Union, at the beginning of that season, the expectation was that team could make a run for a state championship. And unlike Mount Union, where they don't talk about national championships, it was talked about with that state championship team. So that was a tremendous experience just in and of itself, but amplified because it was never even in the realm of possibility prior to that.
Right.
So that would be number 1. I'd probably back up. We won a couple conference championships, 1 in football, 1 in basketball. Upper Sandusky hadn't seen a conference championship in decades. That was neat. to be part of those teams and to break that streak. My sophomore year in basketball, we had the top 7 guys. 6 of them were seniors, and then it was myself. And that was a ton of fun. That's probably the most fun I'd ever had playing a sport at that time. A cousin of mine was on the team. I got to play with him. It was an exceptionally tight-knit group, to the point where, Coach Elkert would hand us film and he would let us go study it ourselves. That team would get together a lot outside of basketball.
Right.
So, getting to play basketball with my cousin, having some success, and that was just really a fun year. That might be number 2. Man, I'm having difficulty thinking about the others. So,
okay, that's Greg. Before we go, and you've done a great job, what's the future hold for you in business? You've been kind of goals and goals and goals. What's your next goal? What do you see 5-8 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, my goal is, my first experience professionally was at a big company, and it was a miserable experience, and I stuck it out maybe longer than I should have, but it was a good experience for me to have. A large company, I didn't have any responsibility. I singularly focused, and my personality is just not what that was.
Right.
I've been able to just do a complete 180 with what I'm doing now. And I'd like to fast forward and see myself doing something very similar, having my hand in just about everything. I don't know if we're, I'm going to stick it out with where I'm at now. It's
right.
The best part about what I do is the people that I work with.
Right.
And so, you obviously want to love what you do. No matter what you do, there are going to be things you're going to have to do that you don't want to do. You talked about inconvenience earlier. So number 1, I'd say love the people that you work with. Number 2, the majority of what you're doing, you should enjoy. But no matter what, I think in order to get those 2 things, you're going to have to do things that you maybe don't love or don't like. And
right.
I mean, that's just the reality no matter where you're at. And that's not the majority of my day, but yeah, I'd like to fast forward and see myself in honestly a similar position, a smaller company, being involved in every aspect of it. I think eventually we morph into a company that designs, markets, and sells its own products. That would be exciting. Right now we're just a manufacturer, but the experience has been tremendous. I think we can build upon it. Yeah, that's about all I got.
That's really good. Okay, Greg, again, thank you for being on my show today. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.